Hello and welcome to the Blue Shadow Podcast. My name is Joey.
My name is Dan, and welcome to the first installment of the 2025 Andor series. Um,
Woo! Andor rewatch.
yes, Andor rewatch. Hopefully trying to convince Joey's mind and bring him to the light side because we know he's on the dark side at the moment.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to take
From
the
my point
shots.
of view, you're on the dark side.
Exactly what the dark side people said.
No, that's what Obi-Wan. Well, no, that is what Anakin said. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Andor season two actually comes out at the end of April, April 22nd. It's a Tuesday. It is just the general structure is they're releasing an arc at a time. So like a mini movie, and this is supposed to take us to Rogue One.
hmm
There are time jumps between season one and season two. But yeah, I'm just gonna jump right into it. So how this is gonna be structured, just give a little bit of background about Andor and what it is, how it's been received, and then Joey and I are gonna have a little chat on why he hates it and hates good
Oh
TV.
my goodness. I'm under
So
attack.
I'm sorry, I like to deal in extremes,
Who's the Sith
not
now?
not
Anyway.
absolutes.
All right. Tell us about Andor season one.
Okay, so Andor season one, Rotten Tomatoes. Description is the story of the rebel spy Cassian Andor's formative years of the rebellion and his difficult missions for the cause. It has a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes with an 87% average audience score. So pretty good. Arguably one of the, probably arguably the most well-received Disney Plus Star Wars series.
I would say the first two seasons of The Mandalorian or this are probably the strongest received,
Okay,
but for different reasons.
it's close.
Like I think those
It's
two things are catering to different audiences.
Yes. And that is, as you've heard me lobbing shots at Joey, we are on opposite sides of the spectrum on this. I really enjoyed Andor my first rewatch, but
I
it was
think we should
also,
start with Rogue One. Like just
yeah,
I personally did not love Rogue One. I'm gonna say my piece because Dan said I'm not allowed to
I
say this,
won't,
but I'm gonna say it anyway. I am a Jedi person. I like the stories that involve the Jedi, the Force, the weird Force stuff is like my favorite thing. Like I welcome the Purrgil. And Andor is so the opposite of that. And that's not to say it's bad, it's not good.
mhm,
It's just not for me. So while
understand.
I think Andor is a good show, very well made, I don't enjoy it as much because it's missing some of the zaniness, the weirdness, the fun that I go to Star Wars for.
Correct. I feel like
And I felt that way about Rogue One, and that is kind of the how I left Andor as well. So I guess I kind of fused two
I f-
things together.
I feel like it leaves you on the edge of your seat. You're not sitting back watching Andor, being like, okay, this is gonna turn out great. The good guys are gonna win. We know how Andor ends. We know because we know it goes right up to Rogue One. We know how Cassian's book gets shut rather
Unfortunately.
abruptly. Um, but as Joey mentioned, this is kind of catered towards a certain audience, and I'm in that audience. I like the gritty shows. It's fun. It's fun for me.
And you're a fan of like learning about real world wartime and stuff too. So like I
Don't
think
make me
this
sound
kind
like
of
I'm already a Star Wars nerd. Don't make me be a history nerd too. Got a reputation to maintain.
I think that is the reputation. Anyway,
Oh,
I'm not surprised that this is right up your alley, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
yes. So, as somebody who wasn't the biggest fan of Andor on his
Yes.
first delayed watch.
And that is an important thing to say. Andor season one came out in the midst of a very hectic time in my life. It was right around when my wedding was happening. I think maybe like a week before was the premiere or something. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But I did not watch it immediately as it aired, which is the very first time it's happened for a Star Wars show, and even since. But I, even upon watching it, I still maintain these feelings. So anyway, go ahead.
That's right. So, apart from the lack of the zany force, what was one big criticism you've had of the show?
I, and I don't know that I could call this a criticism. Like I think it is
Well,
it
for
did what it set
you,
out to. For me, I didn't like how bleak it was. I know that's the point, and I know that's what they're doing. But for me, a core tenet of Star Wars, something that's present in almost every single Star Wars story, no matter the format, no matter the outcome, is a sense of hope. And Andor had it. Don't get me wrong. There are kernels of hope in Andor, and that's the whole point of the show in a sense. But I
Hmm.
like to turn to Star Wars to feel inspired. And I don't necessarily feel like I got that feeling from Andor, at least the majority of it. We may have ended in certain spots or certain arcs feeling that, but I think there's a lot of despair in the show, which, like, maybe Star Wars is a form of escapism for me. I don't know.
Hmm. That's
And,
fair.
and this kind of drags you down a little.
Well, I think kind of what we talked about before. I think Andor shows you the everyday, the life of the everyday person. We don't see the Jedi. We're not getting wowed with the mysticism of the Force and the Jedi Temple and stuff like that and these wild adventures. It's okay, this is the life of somebody on a mining planet,
It's
just trying
true
to
that
make
this is
just trying
different. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, just trying to make ends meet.
And it is different than something like a Skeleton Crew or a Mandalorian, which does have those overtones of the stuff that I'm saying I love. Like
Hmm.
those are your everyday people to a certain extent. Maybe in the earlier season of The Mandalorian, but it definitely gives you that perspective. One thing, like I guess I can say like there are a lot of things that I did appreciate about the show if I'm able to transition into like
Absolutely.
with respect to what you're saying, like the everyday, like I thought the Ferrex, like the set,
Hmm.
it made you feel like you were in Star Wars. Like you kind of knew what was around the corner by the time you got to like the next episode. Like you felt like you were a citizen there, and I like that a lot.
Like just like Galaxy's Edge.
Actually, yes, very similar. So,
Yeah, no, I really like the whole Ferrex, the idea of Ferrex
hmm
and how it's like, oh, good, like oh my God, the Empire. And again, we've talked about this before. It was the first time the Empire really was just like competent.
hmm that we've seen anyway.
Yeah.
I guess anyone in the Empire outside of like Palpatine and Vader.
Yeah. Even Vader was was pretty competent.
Yeah,
Just
those
had a
two.
little
I'm saying
personal.
those two are pretty competent.
Oh yeah.
I well, I guess I could say like I feel like I've done a lot of sharing of like what didn't quite work for me, and there are like I said, a lot of things that I did enjoy about it. What made the show resonate so much with you?
Like you did mention, I do have a natural inclination towards this type of show. And you said that there wasn't too much hope in this show. We got kernels of hope. We didn't have the overarching theme of hope.
Hmm
And I think that was the point. I don't think we were supposed to feel hopeful watching this show, especially knowing what we know
hmm
in the dramatic irony that we know that Cassian meets his demise at the Death Star.
Which
Or
he kind
because
of indirectly helped make, which is
I
crazy
know,
too.
which is awful to feel when you think about it.
Yeah.
But again, it goes back to that it really like the spark of the rebellion, that it really does need something to drive it forward. And that there's a lot of, while there is hope, there's also not a lot of hope.
And I
I
think it
think
is a very
we've,
realistic way of looking at things. Like you're not always going to have the hero standing in front of you with a giant shining sword, like to make
right.
things better. And that is something that I do value about this show is it's a far more realistic look at hope.
And it gives us different perspectives. I mean, one of your favorite characters from the show, Mon Mothma,
Yeah, yeah,
we get to
uh-huh.
see the juxtaposition of Mon Mothma and Lucian of they want the same goal, but how are they going to accomplish that goal? And it's almost like you have to pick a side of whose camp would you rather be in?
And I'm one thing I'm hopeful for is I feel like we spent a lot of time with Luthen in the
Or
first season
Luthen,
where
excuse me.
that's okay. I did that last season. One of the characters in the book that I'm reading, his name is Lucian, and I don't know if I did it, but the last time we were recording, I almost did it. But I hope that this season we know Cassian ends up with Mothma, so I hope we kind of see a pivot into that. And I love like, and that's another thing that I loved is learning more about Mon Mothma and like kind of the sad story of her family and like what she has to sacrifice to be the character
Hmm.
that we, you know, barely see in Return of the Jedi even, but be the essentially the leader of the rebellion.
Yeah. So what was your favorite arc of the first season?
Oh, that's a really tricky one. I feel like the last one with like the Ferrix, like when everything comes to a head on Ferrix. Because
That's a
I
good
think
one.
that is where you kind of get the sense of satisfaction of all the like the little kernel of hope kind of puffs up a little.
Yes.
I feel like I know what you're
That's
gonna say.
what do you think I'm gonna say?
The prison arc.
That was a good one. I also like the theft arc.
That they were so varied and so good. I have
And it
to
was
say.
like, yeah, and it was just there was so much and you don't know really know how to feel in it too. It's like, oh, that's good. And then it's like, oh, soul crushed.
Yeah. And that maybe that's something that I again I love I turn to Star Wars for a sense of not always optimism, but like inspiration. And this is just very like crushingly real world sometimes. And
It
that's part of
is.
my struggle.
And I need everybody listening to know I'm not I know I'm attacking Joey because it's I have to. But no, I know that there's chocolate and vanilla and we are just different. We like different types of shows, and unfortunately, this is really the first Star Wars show that I think really doesn't isn't right in the middle of your wheelhouse.
Yes, and
So
I
I have
think
to razz you a little bit.
and that's okay. And this we are friends first, podcast partners second. So you're hearing friendly banter, not just people who work together in this
Yeah, no
capacity.
professional banter.
Do you feel like and we've poked fun at each other on off and on about Andor, but do you feel like after having this little conversation that you feel like a more complete understanding of my thoughts on it, or do you feel
Oh,
like you kind of
absolutely.
had it from the beginning?
Knowing you, I feel like I had it from the beginning, but I never heard like the full explanation of the why,
Mhm.
other than it was there's not the whimsical Jedi.
Yeah, it's and don't get me wrong, like I think The Acolyte is an example of a show for better or worse that balanced some of the grittiness of what Dan loves with the Jedi
Hmm.
aspect that I loved. And I think that's why I like that show's gritty. That show is very dark, but I enjoyed it more because in the midst of all that, we're seeing some of the coolest lightsaber fights that have ever happened in Star Wars.
Oh yeah,
And
and
I feel like this is good. This is good because I feel like I've gotten to articulate myself a little more than I have ever about it.
yes, and then I will say I am a little biased because it does lead into my favorite era. I'm an original trilogy sort of guy, and it's
It's fair.
directly
It's fair.
there's a little bias there, I will say.
I mean, I will say, while I am this, while this, and again, if you've listened to us, you know the sequels are my favorite era. The excitement around it was just enough, so infectious for me to like really enjoy those movies. But I love Rebels. Rebels is one of my favorite things. Maybe even potentially more than the sequel trilogy. I'm not sure. It's too bold to say, but I think like my hope for season two, and maybe we'll talk about this kind of at the end of the rewatch. But my hope for season two is that we get a little more Rebels, like a little more of that. Like once we start to become a little more interconnected with the Rebel Alliance, it might be a little more of what I would want out of something like a rebellion-based show.
Right, and I feel like we do need to mention that I know we've mentioned it before, but Andor was originally supposed to be 5 seasons. It's now
Mhm.
2 seasons, so we can't really speculate on what was going to be there, wouldn't be there, because I feel like if it was 5 seasons, we definitely would have gotten the Rebels connections.
And I suspect there might be something like, yeah, we know the rebels are at Yavin. We know they
Yeah,
are involved with Mon Mothma. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the ghost at a minimum or something.
right.
Can I say two other things I like before we kind of talk
But
about the structure of the rewatch?
by all means.
First is B2 Emo. I think he's fantastic. And my theory is that B2 Emo is gonna like somehow be like programmed into K2SO or something. That's like my crackpot theory.
Not the I God, I can't believe I'm saying this. Of all your theories, I think that one's the most realistic.
Uh-huh. I think it could because
E-
like if B2 Emo had a little more confidence, it's practically K2SO, I feel like.
Right, and B2EMO is this little
Box.
box where K2SO is a what type of droid is it?
KX, maybe KX or K series droid or something.
Yeah, like a utility droid.
Formidable droid. So I love B2 Emo. And I absolutely love, and we've talked about this before. I love Edie Karn for some reason. I think she's so mean and she's such a bad person, but that makes her such a lovely character.
Yes, hopefully we get more of her.
Would you have ever expected that to be someone that I loved in this show?
No.
I just like every scene you want to just like keep watch. You just want to hear what else she's gonna say to insult Cyril. It's like, oh my God, this woman is terrible.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to add on Andor season one prior to us rewatching it?
Not at all. I hope you Dan and you the listener understand my perspective. I again think that this is a very well-made show. I think it's very good. I think it deserves all the critical success that it's gotten. But I think that for the reasons I described, it's not my favorite.
And that's okay. Again, I really, really enjoyed it from the start. This was about the only time I ever got to tell Joey he was behind on a Star Wars thing. It's usually the other way around.
That it is.
So it was just a tad nice coming into work, being like, caught up on Andor? No, better catch up.
Oh man.
But now I don't get to do that anymore because we're going to rewatch it together. Well,
Uh-huh.
not together.
Separately together.
Yes. So the structure of our rewatch that we decided on is going to be very similar to the way season two is coming. And this will help us be like our little trial run for season two. So we are going to watch it in the arc based. Over the next couple weeks, we will be discussing the arcs and, not just kind of getting each other's thoughts and hopefully see if anybody has a change of heart. Hope
That feels targeted.
the kernel is popping.
But yeah, that'll give us a week or two in between season one, season two, get us all geared up. Hopefully you'll maybe rewatch it with us. Let us know your thoughts too.
Mhm.
Anything else to add?
Excited.
Awesome.
This is our first,
I am excited too.
this is the first Blue Shadow rewatch.
It's true. And because like I did a little episode about rewatching Kenobi, but I did that on my own. I didn't want to burden you. I think you were like really busy. It was like when you were finishing school. But
Yeah,
I think I'm excited, especially because we have such a large disparity between our feelings about the show.
I agree.
Awesome. Well, with that, we hope you stick around and join us for our Andor rewatch. This is our first feelings. Please be on the lookout for our arc breakdowns and maybe a final episode kind of seeing if anything changed. But we really appreciate you listening. Maybe let us know if you agree maybe more with Dan or with myself. We'd love to hear your thoughts. But please consider giving us a like or a subscription or review on YouTube or the podcast platform of your choice. Consider giving us a follow on Twitter or X at Blue Shadow Pod or on Instagram at Blue Shadow Podcast. And with that, we thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed, and we will see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you.